Hi, I'm Alex Benik, and welcome to Smart People on Ice. We're lucky enough to have two guests with us here today. To my immediate left is Mike Shapiro, the VP of Engineering of DSSD, which was recently acquired by EMC, so congratulations, Mike.
Thanks.
And to Mike's left, Adam Leventhal, who's the CTO of Delphix. Now, we've got two guests here today, and you'll see there's a deep shared history and experience here, going back through time together, working on a number of fascinating technologies at Sun and before that in college. So we'll get to that in a minute, but just to get started, you know, I'm always really interested to understand how people got into technology in the first place. So maybe starting with you, Mike, you know, tell me about, you know, your first memories of like hacking on a computer when you were a kid, or a machine that was important to you, or.
Well, you know, for me personally, the biggest influence and really what got me started in the industry was my dad. He was lucky enough attending college in the late 60s to be involved in, at the time, what was called applied math, you know, and that was where people first got exposure to computers because there were no computer departments then. And he later became a math teacher in the high school where in my town, and he brought some of the first computers that were used in programming classes there. And also as a result, he had access to be able to get you know, early computers, and I got to play with those, both sort of visiting him at work and also at home. So I sort of had a late 70s, early 80s, you know, I sort of had a dual exposure. At home we had sort of the first computer I remember using at home as a young kid was like a TRS-80 Model 1 that we had. And then when I visited my dad at work, they had a PDP-11, you know, and so in that, you know, as a 5 or 6 year old, you know, you had giant tape drives and punch cards and all kinds of, you know, buttons and lights and dials. And so I just remember playing with that stuff from a really early age, and it was just something that fascinated me. And then obviously, you know, my dad taught me how to program, and it's a passion that's really continued with me.
How about you, Adam?
Well, you know, I had a very different experience from Mike. My folks were, and to this day are not particularly computer savvy, but I would go to my dad's office, he was a doctor, and bang away on the keyboard. And then later on, you know, he got a Mac Plus when I was a kid. That was the first computer I really remember playing with a lot, but getting very involved with the configuration of that. You know, learned to program in BASIC, the program that everyone writes, which is print. You know, my friend is a jerk. Go to 10.
Go to 10, repeat.
The program that has been written 10 million times. I didn't realize I was writing Hello World at the time, but there it was.
Yeah. It's okay. Then, my parents still think I fix computers for a living. So.
I think all of our parents do. Yeah. But then, you know, in high school, I took some computer science classes, but only later realized it was not particularly well taught or sophisticated. But was lucky enough to play with Next systems in high school and VAXes and a whole litany of different systems. But where I really fell in love with computer science was in college. I went in thinking maybe I'd do applied math, but then that first computer science class, I just found that it consumed all of my time, and I would be clicking reload on the website for the course, waiting for the next assignment to come out, because I just got so excited for it and so into it.
Yeah, actually, I had a Mac 512K right after Mac Plus. That was the first one that was important to me, but I only used it to play Load Runner, like for hours and hours. Yeah. And so, yeah, you were talking about college. So you guys both went to Brown, but not exactly at the same time. You know, I grew up across the street from Brown, you know, so 401 is representing here today.
That's right. Yeah, so Mike actually came back to Brown and interviewed me, and Mike, I'm sure you don't remember, but Mike, it was at the Sun at the time, and I was interviewing for an internship, and I didn't, for whatever reason, get my act together to get on the interview schedule. It was the last interview of the day, and I kind of barged my way in. And I saw, you know, Mike for the first time, and he's exhausted as I've ever seen him. And we've worked on some projects which have led to serious exhaustion, but there's nothing quite like the exhaustion of talking to 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds for a full day of brutal interviews. And then, you know, interned at Sun with Mike as one of my mentors, and then joined Mike at Sun full time, and we worked on a number of projects together after that.
And then, so when did you get to Sun, Mike? What was the era then before you?
So I started. Well, I was, you know, I was very fortunate to, you know, I think for everybody who was coming out of university into the industry in the late 90s was obviously a tremendously exciting time to come out to the Valley. At Sun, at Brown rather, Brown was a very early customer of Sun's when Sun was kind of, the premier workstation company, and then getting into Unix servers. And so there was a Sun lab at Brown, which was filled with, originally SPARCstation 1s and then SPARCstation 2s. And so that's really where I learned Unix and got really excited about Unix. And in fact, that was really the major reason why I wanted to work at Sun after college was, Sun seemed like Unix headquarters. And so if you wanted to do Unix, that was the place that you should go. So I ended up starting at Sun in the late summer of 1997. And that was obviously, right as we were as an industry getting into the real, last couple of years of that amazing internet boom. Sun obviously did really well during that. Yeah. So that was a really exciting time to be there, to be doing servers, and providing those to, all these startups that were happening at the time. Now obviously, then there was a period after that. We'll get into that, but it was a great time to start and be out in the industry and come out to the Valley.
Got it. And you guys, so back then it was Solaris kernel you guys were working on, and then obviously a bunch of cool projects. D-Trace and ZFS came later. Yeah,
we both worked on the Solaris kernel team for a long time. Adams, as he said, he started an intern, and then we hired him full time. We had a really, I'm sure Adam would agree with me. There was a period of years there where we had, I think, really one of the most exceptional OS teams in the industry, with just an amazing collection of people that had all kinds of great different abilities, also worked really well together, and there was a real momentum, among the people there in that activity at Sun, as well as others. But that group was a terrific group, and there was sort of a period of years there where we were really firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I joined Sun in 2001 in the kernel group, and obviously it was a very different time than the late 90s, as then what my more senior colleagues would opine at the time was the stock can't possibly get lower than it is right now. Of course, they had no idea. But it was a very interesting time, as Mike said, in terms of the technology we were working on in the group. Everyone seemed to think that Linux, outside of the Solaris group, that Linux was the answer regardless of the question. In the meantime, we were quietly built, and we, meaning Mike and folks who had preceded me, built a very stable foundation in Solaris that we could then build some pretty amazing technologies on in Solaris 10.
Got it. And then you guys were all involved in, some cool technologies that came into Solaris, D-Trace. I'm sure the sudden hipness of things like Docker and Linux containers is somewhat ironic to you, given that's been shipping in Solaris for 10 years or so.
Well, I was just looking at that the other day, and there's some new things there, which I actually thought, gee, we should have gone further based on what we did, but certainly common. But yeah, but I think that there was we did a release. After Adam had joined, and we had some other folks, and there were a couple years where we worked on Solaris 10, which was really kind of an amazing release for Sun, where we had a whole bunch of really new breakthrough features, including D-Trace that Adam and I worked on with a colleague of ours, and also with the zones feature that you were sort of alluding to there, and we had 5 or 6 things in that release that were really amazing that we all worked on together for about 3 years, and in fact, that a lot of those technologies, I think, you sort of see the echo of that, because I think those are really some of the most important things that happen in OS kernels, across the past 10 years now. And those technologies, whether it be in their Solaris form or as they get adapted into the other OSs, the effects of those things are still being felt now.